Hey everyone, I'm Mr. Willis, and welcome back to You Will Love AP Gov. Thanks for joining me for another video on one of the required foundational documents for AP US Government. Today's video is all about Federalist No. 10, a cornerstone essay written by James Madison, which tackles the danger of factions and how to limit their power and influence in American government. If you're taking notes for your AP class or prepping for the AP exam, remember to click on the link below and download the free guided notebook page to make it easier to follow along. Let's break it down. The main argument in Federalist No. 10 is that a large and diverse republic, as envisioned in the Constitution, is the best way to control the influences of the various factions within American government, thus protecting the rights of those in the minority from the tyranny of those in the majority. Madison makes several key points to support his argument. First, that the greatest threat to democracy comes not from a single ruler, but from self-interested factions that could seize power and undermine the rights of others. Second, that the focus of a free society should not be on eliminating factions altogether, but simply controlling their effects on the stability of government. Third, that the best way of controlling factions is the establishment of a large, robust, and diverse republic rather than many smaller, more direct democracies. Fourth, that the system of government proposed in the Constitution has built-in mechanisms to manage the various factions within American government, while still preserving individual liberty. The Federalist Papers were a series of 85 essays written by Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay to promote the ratification of the U.S. Constitution and respond to the concerns that the citizens might have about the newly proposed government. One of the most famous of these essays is Federalist No. 10, written by James Madison in 1787. When Madison wrote Federalist No. 10, the United States was still operating under the Articles of Confederation, which had proven to be ineffective in maintaining national stability. Many feared that replacing the Articles with a stronger central government would lead to tyranny, but Madison saw a different problem. He believed that the greatest threat to democracy came not from a single ruler or a centralized government, but from powerful factions. Madison defines a faction as a number of citizens, whether amounting to a majority or a minority of the whole, who are united and actuated by some common impulse of passion or of interest, adverse to the rights of other citizens or to the permanent and aggregate interests of the community. These would be concentrated groups of citizens who organize themselves to advocate for a cause or advance a shared interest, and who, if given the power, would impose their will on everyone else with little regard as to how it might impact other groups or citizens in society. Today, we might recognize factions in the form of political parties, lobbying groups, or even grassroots movements. Let's take a look at how Madison presents his argument by analyzing some of the most famous quotes from the document and how you can interpret these quotes in an FRQ or essay. Madison begins by declaring the latent cause of faction are thus sown in the nature of man. Here, Madison argued that factions are inevitable because people naturally hold different opinions, interests, and levels of wealth. As a result, conflict between different interests is simply unavoidable. In a free society, these differences will always exist, and trying to eliminate factions altogether would require eliminating liberty itself, something Madison saw as unacceptable. He writes, "Liberty is to faction what air is to fire, an ailment without which it instantly expires. But it cannot be less folly to abolish liberty, which is essential to political life, because it nourishes faction, than it would be to wish the annihilation of air, which is essential to animal life, because it imparts to fire its destructive agency." In other words, while factions can be dangerous, the only way to completely remove them would be to take away the freedom to think freely, express opinions, and to assemble for political purposes, which would be a far worse outcome than the existence of factions themselves. In Madison's estimation, it can never be more truly said than of the first remedy, that it was worse than the disease. Madison's solution to limit the threat of factions was to establish a large pluralistic republic where many groups that represent a vast diversity of interests engage in healthy competition and must compromise with each other to achieve their goals. In such a system of government, no one group would have more influence than the others. Access to policymaking would be open, and the interests of the public would be widely represented. In a small democracy, like those within each individual state under the Articles of Confederation, Madison argues that a single faction could easily gain control and oppress others because fewer people are represented and there are fewer factions competing for power over the political process. A republic, by which I mean a government in which the scheme of representation takes place, opens a different prospect and promises the cure for which we are seeking. In a large republic with many diverse factions, like the one proposed in the new Constitution, it would be much harder for any one group to dominate because each group would be forced to compromise with each other in order to achieve their goals. And the sheer number of interests represented would make it more difficult for factions to seize power because the influence of each faction would be greatly diminished. Madison explains, extend the sphere and you take in a greater variety of parties and interests. You make it less probable that a majority of the whole will have a common motive to invade the rights of other citizens. The competition among factions, Madison argued, would prevent any one group from imposing its will unchecked. The larger the republic, the greater the number of factions, the more pluralistic the republic, and the more protected the government is from a tyranny of the majority. And that's everything you need to know about Federalist No. 10. You can click here for additional videos for AP US Government, and be sure to check out my videos on AP Macroeconomics and AP Microeconomics as well. If you found this video helpful, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more content on AP Government and Economics. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time on You Will Love AP Gov.